Hi, I'm Carly.
And I'm Trey with New City Church.
Welcome to our podcast series on faith and mental health.
Each week we will unpack a topic relating to emotional or mental health and walking out a life of faith.
The format will vary slightly from week to week, from teaching, practical advice, conversation, interviews, and practices that we have found helpful in our own lives.
So, let's jump on in. Welcome to episode 7 of season 2 of our Faith and Mental Health podcast. Today we are diving into a particular practice to help your mental health. And just starting out to say, I know that if you struggle with depression or a number of mental health issues, you're walking through a period of grief, the idea of practicing something, doing something extra, can feel really overwhelming and like more than what you have to give. And so just to open up, I want to acknowledge that and to say that the practice we're talking about today more so is about doing less and stopping than doing. And how that actually can be, even if it's hard on the front ends, really good for your faith. So today the practice that we are talking about is the practice of Sabbath. And just as a quick thing about Sabbath, if you want to do a deeper dive into it, we have a number of teachings on this podcast on Sabbath, including a panel discussion. We also recommend Practicing the Way podcasts and their resources around the Sabbath. So if you want to do a deeper dive, there's a bunch of great resources there. And we, if I remember right, I think we also link some other helpful resources for you there as well. So we want to make it really practical today. So first, Carly, I'm going to ask you a question. How would you define or explain Sabbath?
I would explain it as, oh gosh, okay, I should definitely know the answer to this. Just taking intentional time to rest and recharge and rejuvenate with your Creator.
Yeah, that's good.
And with others.
That's good. Yeah, the word Sabbath in Hebrew is the word Shabbat, meaning literally to like stop or cease. And so it was instituted in the fabric of creation, that on the seventh day, God rested. And if you remember from the story, if you're familiar with it, God created humans on the sixth day. And so their first like a full day was a day of rest. And so throughout the scriptures, you see this theme of 7 kind of repeat as like God's number. And we also see that theme of Sabbath kind of repeat. We see that with Sabbath day. We see that with a number of festivals. We see that with the Sabbath year. We see that with the year of Jubilee. We see it in a number of different places where this thing of Sabbath comes up. We also see it come up in Jesus's life and ministry, where he will get into trouble for the things that he does and on the Sabbath, particularly from people who are religious leaders. And so I just want to make a point to say that sometimes in Western sort of more evangelical circles, people say, well, Sabbath isn't important for us anymore because Jesus clearly like broke the Sabbath. Jesus regularly seems to participate in the Sabbath. The question for Jesus was not whether or not you should Sabbath. The question was what is permissible on the Sabbath. And those are two very different questions. Jesus would get in trouble for healing people on the Sabbath. He didn't get in trouble for not taking a Sabbath. And so if you're listening and you're like feeling a reservation in yourself of just like, that feels really legalistic to take the Sabbath, I think you might be missing the point. And I would just encourage you to ask, what is it within you that makes you averse to the idea of stopping and resting as something that is good and a blessing from God? One of my favorite ways of understanding Sabbath is that it reminds us that we're human beings and not human doings. Sabbath traditionally is a 24-hour period of time that you designate to not do work and to be with God, be with yourself, be with others. And so it's traditionally a 24-hour period of time. Jewish tradition would be Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown. There's a number of rituals and things that can be associated with that. A number of Christians also do it on Sundays, incorporating things like worship gathering and other things in there as well. I think the 24-hour period is still kind of my rule of thumb if I want to get really technical on it. But to be really honest, I know that I can be so technical about the 24-hour period that I forget that Sabbath is supposed to transcend into every other day of the week, that if I Sabbath Friday at sundown to Saturday at sundown, I'm likely still, working Friday morning and Saturday night.
Yeah.
And so, which that's fine, but I'm not actually like embodying what Sabbath is. That Sabbath ought to be this like, um, I think Abraham Heschel called it, who's a Jewish scholar and writer, called it a cathedral in time. That it was a way in which we like step into this eternal time that is different than the rest of the days of the week. And so we wanted to make this podcast today super practical and talk about a couple different ways that people describe Sabbath. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of those and just kind of offer some things about what that looks like for us as a way of hopefully helping you brainstorm what it might look like for you. So one of the ways that has been really helpful for me to understand Sabbath is that Sabbath is about three things. I'm trying to remember this. This may have been from Ruth Haley Barton or from Adele Calhoun. I can't remember which one, but I think one of those two. That it is about resting your body, replenishing your spirit, and restoring your soul. So, resting your body, that could be things like a nap or eating a meal that you like, going on a walk, whatever is restful for your body. Replenishing your spirit, what sounds fun and delightful, and restoring your soul, that is more the like intimate spaces with God, things that help draw you in close to Him. So, what I'd love to do is just kind of go through each of those, Carly, and just hear what for you that looks like. So, first, resting your body. When you think of that, what kind of things come to mind as being restful for you?
Um, I love coziness. So,
Love it.
warm beverage, fuzzy blanket, cozy spot. That's like a real recipe for just hanging out. Um, I enjoy also like hanging out with my husband like that, or like reading aloud to each other, just like a fun book. Hammocking, all kinds of stuff, really. But I also really love watching my plants grow and like
That's fun.
doing things with that. So, um, yeah, I think just like a slowness and a pace of what sounds good now and what sounds fun now.
Mm,
Instead of like, okay, we've planned these chores and this and that and this and that. Like just a slowness to your day.
yeah, like even resting with those chores left undone.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get to them and we want to do them today and that sounds nice, sure.
Right.
But also if not,
Yes.
that's fine too. That's good. I think for me, I'm still figuring out what it looks like with uh, toddler, and I'm by the time this podcast airs, my wife and I'll have our second kid, and so what does rest look like with two, under two in the home? If you know, let me know. Uh,
Looks like sending them to your in-laws.
Honestly though, that
Yeah.
has been a form of rest. Napping when they're napping, I think, for me also realizing that in our house, like it's not just about me being able to find rest, just me, but it's like about our whole home.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing things that are very much like not work. So it might not be like I'm able to physically rest. Like I would love to take a nap, lay on the couch, read a book, maybe uh, watch something, or whatever, or eat a nice meal, uh, eat what I would like on Sabbath. I try to do those things when I can, but also just like very intentionally rest and abstain from work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you know, not having my phone, not checking social media, not checking email. If I do have my phone, we'll move into this with the replenishing your spirit, but not, yeah, being on Instagram or email or work related
Mm-hmm.
things. And so resting might look like, yeah, playing a game with my son, or um, very much not work.
Finding sticks in the yard.
Finding sticks in the yard, hunting for bugs. Um, yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, second kind of movement of it, or second kind of piece of Sabbath from this framework, is replenishing your spirit. What type of things fall in that category for you?
Okay, so recently I heard of this thing called, I think it's imaginative contemplative, oh my gosh, it's so hard to say, prayer.
Cool.
And so there's this app called Pray As You Go that has these like guided, it's like an imaginative experience of putting yourself in the story in scripture and like smelling, tasting, seeing what would
Cool.
be there. And so this is very new for me, like this week, but it was really cool. And I think is like a great way to actually put yourself into the story instead of like it does something different than like, ugh, it looks like Jesus is telling this person something harsh or not, no, like this or that or this or that. And like putting yourself there and thinking about like what actually might be happening, like what would his
Hmm.
tone be and like what is he, why is he saying these things? And also like where would I be in this story and what things would I be smelling or tasting or hearing? And it just allows you to like engage that part of your mind that's imaginative, and it might not be completely historically accurate, and that's totally fine. That's like part of it. But yeah, it has been for me a different way to experience prayer than like I
Hmm.
should be praying. Which for me right now is like a hard thing for me to feel like I just should be doing this instead of delighting in it. And so, or wanting to. Um, so that's restorative. Singing for me is very restorative.
Hmm.
Writing,
Hmm.
for me.
What does so probably most people listen to the podcast know that Carly is our pastor of worship in mission. So for you, for singing, what does that look like for you for it to be in the replenishing your spirit category without moving into the I'm thinking about
Mhm.
work or leading people into this? Or is that something you struggle with?
I mean, there are times where I'm like, oh, this would be so cool to do on a Sunday or whatever. That's just going to happen. But I try to just sort of redirect and,
Cool.
yeah, be in that space. Or I'll sing something that I would never lead on a Sunday or something like
Hmm.
that. So,
Yeah.
or write my own something. Um,
Cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. Except for just for my own personal knowing, I easily like find my imagination space going into those types of
Mm-hmm.
in those types of places.
It makes sense. Like, that's what your brain is used to doing with those pathways. Like,
Hmm.
it does automatically
And
equate to work. But,
and since I was little, like, I watch American Idol or whatever, and like
right.
I picture myself doing something
That is very American. Yeah.
like that.
The number of people that have been like, you should do The Voice or American Idol or this or
Uh-huh.
that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, I just always picture it turning into doing
Right.
something in regardless of what it is. That can be something I
And maybe
struggle with.
that's not something that's restful for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it depends on the season, for me. So like replenishing my spirit, uh well, once again, in the season with a toddler, it looks different. So, going back to the resting my body thing, I think often on Sabbath I'll like, yeah, a meal that I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh eat something nice, drink something that I'll enjoy, playing ball with Caleb. If I had like a free day, either reading a book that I would like, and I have to be mindful of what books I read. I can easily jump into like really spiritual sort of books, so I try, which for a lot of people will be really good and restorative, but for me, I sometimes try to opt towards like a fiction or something that is
Mm-hmm.
just totally out of the realm of something that I plan to use in any way, shape, or form like that. It's just like an intentional spiritual practice to see God in my mundane and
Mm-hmm.
not in these like big concepts. Uh, Sometimes playing music. I love playing spike ball. Sometimes going rock climbing can be really fun because I think I use my mind and my heart a lot in like work. Doing something with my hands and my feet
Mm-hmm.
can be really replenishing. Whereas I think if you did something with your hands and feet more so in work, uh, or even your mind, like just engaging different parts of you,
Yeah.
I think can be really helpful. And then the last movement, and you kind of touched on this, or last thing with Sabbath would be restoring your soul. What kind of things fall into that category for you?
Yeah. I think obviously those sort of bleed over for me,
Yeah.
both categories. Yeah. Hmm. I don't know if I could make a distinction between the two.
Hmm. That's fine too. I do wonder, and this is just a stream of consciousness thought, but I wonder if because of working in ministry, we do and talk so much about the things that fall into the typical like restore your soul category of formal practices of prayer and reading your Bible and more directly spiritual things. If there's something that God does in us, particularly in the other things that falls into the restoring our souls category.
Yeah, I think probably so.
So yeah, I try to read my Bible on Sabbath still, and that type of thing, but also try to just whatever I do have less pressure
Hmm.
around whatever the whatever the thing is.
Yeah, I think it's hard because also for us, like spiritual practices, creative outlets, a lot of times do overflow into our jobs as well. But like also as a part of being an authentic leader to like
Mm.
share what God's been doing in you and to show others. So it's like, I don't know that there's a way to fully separate those
Yeah,
things.
that's true.
So, um, that's maybe not the end goal when you're doing it to rest and rejuvenate, but it's also like, and a natural overflow. Like, if that's something that you find helpful or it helps you grow or it's exciting or new for you, like, you tend to want to share it with people that you care about.
Hmm.
And um, so yeah, I think those are hard to parse out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's one framework that I found really helpful just to like think of things to add in there. The second framework is from Practicing the Way, and once again, for this one, I encourage you to check out if you want a longer deep dive into each one of these. We've got a teaching series as well as there's the Practicing the Way podcast that dives really deep into all these. But their movements of Sabbath would be stop, rest, delight, and worship. So let's start with stop. Um, what kind of things do you have to stop on Sabbath?
yeah, for me, I am very like, this part of the house needs to be cleaned and this in the yard needs to be done and this, laundry pile needs to be done. So I can get very like, if I see it, it's hard for me to like
Mm,
just leave it. And so I have to stop that sort of hustle, I guess, of just like caring for the home. Because it's not restful. It's just, although having a clean house is restful for me, so even like
yeah.
maybe preparing in advance that my house is clean and then ready for rest.
Hmm. Yeah, like not running a full sprint into Sabbath
Right. Yeah.
and then just like gonna stop.
Yeah. 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 I think also for me, what you mentioned earlier, the phone and stopping the social media cycle or um, all the other apps that take your attention, time and
Hmm.
attention. For me, it feels like giving my brain a rest. And so
Yeah.
stopping those things, stopping like any kind of obligations maybe from other people. Like, not that spending time with people is always an obligation, a lot of times it's really fun. So just assessing like, is this like an obligatory thing that I'm doing, or is this like I'm gonna have fun and go eat with my friends or whatever?
Hmm.
So,
That's good. Yeah, I think for me it's varied based on season. I think in the past year or so, I think I've had to stop. I think I became or started becoming a lot more legalistic about my Sabbath.
mm,
Like it's Sabbath, so we don't do chores. We don't clean. We don't, and I I think there can be some wisdom in that, depending on your season or whatever. It can be good. I think for me, my Sabbath very much became like primarily about me and about me enjoying it and me feeling good. And so I think Sabbath, part of the invitation for me in stopping is like stopping my like expectations, and my Sabbath is like not that I'm aiming to be interrupted on my Sabbath, but particularly like with family or whatever, like my day is ours,
Yeah.
and so like if for me, and this isn't for everybody, but like doing chores around the house will help like my family feel like restful and
Mm-hmm.
like they can stop, then I can do chores.
Right.
Would that be my personal preference? Not necessarily. But if I'm doing that, then maybe I will, you know, either our son will help me vacuum, or I will like listen to a podcast or
He's so helpful.
so helpful. No, it's actually really fun when he helps.
That's cute.
Yeah, so I think for me, I think there's an invitation for me to stop my expectations around it being something, um, and I'll allow it to just exist
Yeah.
and be and not hold on to it with like a clenched fist.
Yeah, I was thinking like earlier when you were talking about one of those things and talking about what it's like with a toddler. I was just like wondering, a part of it is delight in
Mhm.
experiencing like being a father to
Mhm.
Caleb
Mhm.
and um like I know that you delight in things that he does. And so like it connects you in a way
Mhm.
if you connect it to like this is how the father also looks at
Mhm.
me and Caleb,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think there's something really beautiful and
Mhm.
restorative in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like it's different. Like it's not the I would do, like I might not be able to sit down and read the book that I
Right.
wanted to read. I may be reading, Little Blue Truck 20 times
Right.
but like he's enjoying it and we may be throwing a ball or we may be hunting for bugs or we may be playing tag or going on a walk or I mean literally anything
Mhm.
but just like fully immersing myself in like being and stopping my expectations of like just me doing what I want to do
Right.
has been kind of one of the invitations and obviously stopping work, stopping like social media feed, stopping you know a range of other things. So the second movement would be that of rest.
Mhm.
And we kind of hit on this with resting your body, but is there anything else that you would add in that category for
I
you for rest?
think sleep, obviously.
Yeah,
And so I think there are ways that you can kind of prepare yourself for sleep that's going to help you sleep better than
sure.
others. So, like Daniel and I, it's a constant battle, but always trying to think about like putting your phone away at a certain time, not watching TV, but like reading before
Hmm.
bed. Now, for me, I'm a creative, so I can get immersed in a story, and that actually doesn't help me sleep. So
Sure.
it depends on the book. But yeah, just doing some of those things, or maybe even just like a little routine or ritual that like
Hmm.
helps you wind down, like some chamomile tea or like yeah, dimming the lights or lighting a candle
Hmm.
or because sleep is a huge part of that
Yeah.
and making sure you sleep well for whatever
Hmm.
sleep you get to have with littles in the home or just like anxieties that wake you up in the night or for
Hmm.
me my dog sometimes um,
Sure.
or the frogs that croak really loud outside our window now
Oh,
um,
that's interesting.
yeah, weird. um, yeah, I would say it's
Yeah.
a huge part of it. And also eating. So like
Hmm.
um enjoying a meal. For me, I love cooking and I love using like like my herbs that I'm growing. It just like
Hmm.
feels so restorative to me.
Yeah.
Um and then like having dessert or like making a cocktail or something like that that like really
Hmm.
um I don't know, is restful for your body as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's good. Yeah. So moving from rest into delight, these things kind of probably fall in both categories for us. Like Caleb is now hitting an age where sometimes he probably is not going to sit for like a movie, and that's great. Um, but he does enjoy that, and so like if we could sit and like turn on a movie and watch it as a family, or um, gives a moment for our bodies to rest and not be running around, and it's something that he he enjoys, and I can get pretty immersed in like watching cars or like
Yeah.
um or whatever too. And I've heard of a number of families like on the Sabbath too, who like, yeah, we watch a movie
Mhm.
as part of it. And for other people, media is something that they're very particular on. Like we don't
Mhm.
do media on the Sabbath, but it also can be like, yeah, on Friday night we don't always do this by any means, but like you pick up pizza and you watch a movie together, and
Yeah.
it's like a fun family
Mhm.
chill thing.
Right.
For parents, it gives you a time to just like sit and be. And for the kids, it's like, oh, this is really fun.
Yeah.
And it becomes something really fun for everybody. Yeah, and then in the delight category, I think for me too, once again, it varies. I think now it's like really just like leaning into what is fun for like my whole family. And so yeah, whether that's like playing ball or yeah, just really aiming to be like present and take every moment as like what it is,
Mhm.
without a ton of expectations around it. So like last weekend, we went to Aquatic Critter. I don't know if you've ever been over there.
I've been meaning to go.
It's cool. So they have like it's a place in Nashville that has a lot of like snakes and lizards and all sorts of like critters on one side. Then the other side's like fish, and I mean tons and tons of fish. And we walk in and to the fish. Well, we walk in and there's a big snake, and Caleb goes, "Hello," waving. And then we go into the fish area. And he goes, "Wow, fish," or something like that. And just when he saw one, he like, "Hi, bye," and yellowfish. Yellow's his color right now.
Cute.
Anyway, so like that is like just a thing of like delight
Mhm.
and fun. So I think for me lately that practice has been a whole lot of delight, has been very much more just like leaning into being really present and just like yeah, enjoying things
Mhm.
with my family. Yeah.
Yeah, I think something that's so fun about kids is like their world is just so whatever's in front of them,
Yes.
and if you can start to see the world through their eyes and like being like, wow, this is pretty amazing, all these fish, and
Yeah.
um yeah,
I
or
was like, do we need to get fish? No, we don't.
don't get a snake.
No, it was a big snake too.
Yeah, no.
I'll
Mm-mm.
stop.
I won't come to your house ever if you get one of
Fair
those.
enough.
Fish I could handle. Um yeah, but I was just thinking like I think delight is a mindset shift
Hmm.
more than activities.
Hmm.
And
That's good.
so I think like there's so much that we take for granted, and just think about food. Like there are 1 million different flavors, and each like culture has their own like profile of flavors
Hmm.
and herbs and things that they use and spices, and just taking the time to like recognize that God gave us taste buds that are able to discern like umami and
Mm.
like saltiness and
Mm.
sweetness and like a nice piece of basil on a piece of mozzarella. Like just these amazing flavors, and delighting in those ways and taking that step of being like, God created us so in a way that we could enjoy this, because like
Yeah.
food could be bland and boring and just fill us up, but it's delightful.
Hmm.
And then also just like with anything, like taking that extra like gratitude
Hmm.
mindset of being like, I love having a conversation with my husband. And, isn't it amazing that we have our voices and that we have thoughts and we have things that we share with each other? Or
Hmm.
isn't it amazing that Caleb loves fish and
Hmm.
has that like wide eyed wonder sort of look?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's like a day to play
Yeah.
too. Like there's so much that's restorative. We've talked about this like with play, and like whether that's like imaginative or that's like something with your hands or like playing an instrument or playing a
Hmm.
game or cards, or like there's just something that is fun
Yeah.
with that. And so that actually can be like the practice of play can be a very spiritual practice that you engage in on Saturdays or
Mhm.
whenever you Sabbath. Um, that can be really beneficial for your
Yeah.
whole being. That like throughout the week, okay, this week has been a lot, but like come Sabbath, I'm gonna do things that
Yeah.
are playful and fun. And in some seasons, that's really hard. Like when you're walking through something really difficult, and sometimes busyness also is like a way in which we cover up the pain that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Or something that we go to numb it. And we may even be doing it intentionally. And so the practice of stopping and trying to rest and delight can be really, really difficult because we're confronted with all of those things. And so, I, yeah, with playing
Mhm.
too, you do have to confront like parts of you that are like, playing's worthless. Like, why would I, you know,
Yeah.
like you're kind of awakening your inner child or
Yeah.
allowing the Lord to awaken that within you.
Yeah. I definitely think so. And I mean, I think it's a time to. Is there like an activity that you've always wanted to try? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think about our community has like pickleball classes or something. Like,
Yeah.
what is something that sounds fun that you've always wanted to try that you could try? Or like, do you like going back to your like childhood, like did you love playing with Play-Doh? Like, can you order some Play-Doh or like make it at home and like
Hmm.
just try to reconnect with some of those
Yeah.
things?
And there's something so healing
Mhm.
that the Lord does that into, like in depending on what theory of psychology and like therapy and stuff you go into. There's a good bit of things concerning like healing of the inner child, and also learning to have like a positive association with your
Mhm.
inner child. And so I think some of those practices of doing things that you once used to really enjoy
Mhm.
can be a way of like helping that inner child feel seen and valued and loved
Mhm.
and um,
And
kind
if
of
that
rekindling
feels
that.
yeah, if that feels too silly, like what is a flavor palette? Like what food transports you back in
Yeah,
memory or
Dunkaroos.
to summertime? Yeah, like
I loved
watermelon,
Dunkaroos.
strawberry pie.
Yeah. I saw him on a TV show the other day, and I was
Dunkaroos.
like, "Come on, Dunkaroos." Um, yeah, it's like playful. It can be silly, you know.
Classic 90s
Yeah, for sure.
nostalgia. Yeah.
Um, so that's delight, and then the last movement would be that of worship. And I think for me, this one was the one that whenever I thought about Sabbath growing up, which was not that often, was like, if I take a Sabbath, I'm supposed to read my Bible and pray all day.
Mm.
And to be honest, it did not sound fun.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
what kind of things fall into that category for you as worship, or kind of similar to the answer before with the restoring your soul? Is it kind of all the above?
Yeah, it could be any of the things that we just mentioned, and I think it's like just inviting God into those spaces with you and acknowledging Him in those things. Like, thank you for allowing me to know how to cook this
Hmm.
meal. Thank you for my family that I'm enjoying right now, or my friends that we're having over and we haven't seen in a long time,
Hmm.
or, um, yeah, I think, or like even your dog that does silly things and you like laugh at it, like
Hmm.
thank you for creating such a fluffy little creature that like brings delight. Is an act of worship.
Yeah.
And, it's a communal practice too. So inviting people into those spaces with you, um, whoever that is for you, like a friend going to play pickleball or, those things.
Sounds like you're wanting to play pickleball.
It's just on my mind right now because it's not something no, I really want to learn how to play tennis,
Mm.
but the tennis lessons are full. So I'm just thinking of like things
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily like money sucks or whatever, but like
Yeah.
they,
Don't cost a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, that are happening around you that you might not even like. I
Hmm.
just see pickleball all over the place. People love to play that game. I've never played, but
Hmm.
spike ball, whatever,
Yeah.
volleyball, badminton, all the things.
Yeah.
But yeah, taking that time to acknowledge that like God created those things. If you're standing
Mhm.
in nature and that extra the worship piece is going like God created this and
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and
Hmm.
maybe you're a painter and you can try to replicate that on a canvas. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's all an act of worship.
Yeah. I think I've heard you define worship as like an active, like turning to God.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, it's easy when talking about Sabbath that it can only be like a self-help type thing of like, do these things and your life will be better. Do these things and you'll become more productive. And I think all that stuff happens
Mm-hmm.
with Sabbath. But I think the worship step is taking all that other stuff and then intentionally turning it to God.
Right.
Like, like you mentioned earlier with um, like me playing with my son, like taking that and, oh, like, God, you delight in me. Like, this is really beautiful. Or, oh, you created this. That's really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I'm bored right now and wow, you made time. Or,
Yeah.
or just inviting him into those spaces with you. Not that he's not already there, but just noticing his presence. And then obviously you get into like um, a classic element would be that of like a worship gathering on, a Sunday, if that's when your community does it, and coming together and singing and all of that. And I don't know what that looks like necessarily when it's, it takes a lot of emotional energy to preach and lead worship and do that. But there is something really like worshipful is something that's like included in a Sabbath for I think a lot of people that can be really
Mm-hmm.
important as far as like a practical element too. Um, and yeah, reading your Bible, praying, singing a worship song
Mm-hmm.
can be a range of things.
Listening to a worship song. If you don't sing. But yeah, I also think like I don't want it to come across that it's like you have to be happy the whole time.
Uh huh. Uh
Um,
huh.
I mean, you definitely mentioned earlier, like if you're going through a really hard season, which I've definitely been there, like seasons of grief and hardship, and someone has like a horrible sickness or something that you're walking through, or you are the caregiver for somebody, an aging parent or something like that. Like those things can feel like work to just even try to find something that you're going to delight in. And so I think just like taking the pressure off of it and like letting it just be a moment, like
Mm
a chocolate caramel that you enjoy, or like yeah, um it doesn't have to be this whole planned out, everything is fun, and or like maybe Caleb starts crying, or like Anna's sad or you're sad. Like it's okay. Like those things are also
hmm.
a
Mm
part of just being human. So like giving
hmm. Mm hmm.
yourself grace and allowing yourself to still feel what you need to feel,
Mm hmm.
and inviting God into those
Yeah.
spaces as well.
Yeah. Like putting all this pressure on one day kind of misses the point
Right.
of doing it. And some days it feels harder than others. Some days you feel like you're Sabbath, you feel like you're running into it, and oh gosh. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then other times you're better about it feels more restful or
Right.
more fun. But in all of it, I think that's something the Lord wants to do and grow us in and help
Mm-hmm.
us to be. And He does something in that being with Him, even if we don't feel like it.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that God is a joyful God.
Mm-hmm.
And so we forget that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So even though there's a ton of hard things in the world and in our lives and constantly in our face and thoughts and minds and feelings and all of that, ultimately, like we look forward to a day where all will be joyful and right again. And so we get glimpses of that here. And so learning to really resonate in
Mm-hmm.
those times.
Yeah. And Sabbath is like a foretaste
Mm-hmm.
of that, or made to be that, I think. Um, well, that's what we got. So encourage you to go out and attempt to Sabbath. And as one last practice of delight and play and joy, we have hidden a Lego spaceman somewhere
We both looked at it.
Did we really?
Yeah, we both glanced.
I'm looking somewhere
Oh,
right now.
we
Where
hit
is
it
it? Yeah,
somewhere.
there is a Lego spaceman somewhere in this frame. Find it, comment below, and let us know. And if you're listening online, you can just guess where it is.
Yeah.
Good luck. And if you get it,
Imagine it
yeah, imagine a Lego spaceman.
in your
Picture it
mind's
in your
eye.
brain. And then next week is our last episode for the season, and it will be an interview with one of Carly's dear friends.
Talk about delight.
Talk about delight.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, may God bless you. And may you try taking a Sabbath this week. If you can do 24 hours, encourage you to do that. But if not, take what you can and enjoy it
We're here for you.
virtually or maybe in person.